Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure while you're out during the day? But Susan takes care of you at lunchtime and I have my job. The thought of quitting my job and being at the beck and call from my father-in-law, Taylor, 24/7 sent a shudder through me. I knew right then and there that I absolutely couldn't give up my work. But Taylor was relentless. He had clearly anticipated this kind of reaction from me. What I miscalculated was my husband, Walter's response. Don't you think it's sad that he can't get around on his own? Surely you could do this much for him. But the doctor said Taylor needs to do as much as he can on his own, for the sake of his health. Dad doesn't seem to see it that way. Just do whatever you can for him, okay? Walter's tone made it sound like I was just making excuses because I didn't want to help. Looks like I'm really going to have to give up my freedom. As if to confirm my worst fears, a divorce petition arrived in the mail from Walter, who was away on a business trip. Okay. I'll submit this right away. But what about the kids? Are you really okay with this? I'm fine. Because Walter is. My name is Ashley Carter, a 42-year-old housewife. I'm the mom of a son in 7th grade and a daughter in 6th grade. I work a part-time job for 4 hours a day. After graduating from college and starting my career, I was 23 when I met Walter through an introduction from a colleague. He was 26, a rising elite at a major trading company. He was urbane, smart, and a great conversationalist. I liked him from the moment we met. So when he asked me out, I felt like I was dreaming. I was truly happy. After dating for 2 years, we got married. I continued working, but when I got pregnant for the first time, I developed preeclampsia. You and our child are the most important things to me. Why don't you quit your job for now, and then you can go back to work once the kid is a bit older? It was a job I loved, and I agonized over the decision. But I needed to be hospitalized for a while, and I knew it would cause problems for my workplace. I decided to accept Walter's proposal and resigned. I gave birth to our eldest son, Cody, without complications, and our daughter, Megan, was born the following year. I became a mom of 2, and our happy days continued. But then, something happened that brought an end to those blissful times. 12 years into our marriage, when Cody and Megan were in their preteens, Taylor collapsed from an illness. Fortunately, his life was spared, but he was left with lingering effects that required care. I don't think Mom can handle this on her own. What do you think about moving in together? I honestly struggled with the idea. My in-laws lived about a 30-minute drive away, and we would visit as a family from time to time, but I always felt uncomfortable around Taylor. He was an old-fashioned man who made no secret of his belief that women should devote themselves to serving their husbands. It's good that you quit your job as soon as you had a child. Women these days are too impudent, wanting to keep working even after getting married, he said with a smile when I left my job. I had my reservations about Taylor, but my mother-in-law, Susan, was a truly kind person. The thought of her having to care for Taylor all by herself was heartbreaking. In my day, we believed that once you got married, you should quit your job and focus on your family. But times are different now. I really respect you for taking pride in your work. Susan interjected before Taylor could say anything when he scowled upon hearing that I would continue working after we got married. From then on, whenever there was an issue, she would subtly come to my defense. Thanks to her, I managed to avoid any major conflicts with Taylor. And now, I will be moving in with them to care for Taylor. I agonized over the decision considerably, but in the end, I agreed to it. Susan was already over 70 years old, and I was worried about her, too. And I thought that Taylor, now that he was in a disabled state, surely wouldn't be as overbearing as before. Plus, Walter was always the type to consider my position and properly deal with any issues that came up. Or so I thought when I made my choice. But I was too naive. "So when are you going to quit your job?" Taylor asked with a look of displeasure as soon as he found out I was working part-time after we moved in together. "When you quit your job after having Cody, I thought maybe this daughter-in-law had some promise." So much for that. It seemed like Taylor expected me to be home all day, constantly catering to his every need. Every afternoon except Sundays, I leave for work. It's a job I've been doing for a long time, and I have no intention of quitting. But Taylor doesn't like that one bit. When we decided to move in together, we renovated the in-laws' house to make it barrier-free. My in-laws are quite well off. Their house is old but sits on a large plot of land. With his indoor wheelchair, Taylor can freely move around the house. He should be able to go wherever he wants. We even installed handrails throughout the house. There are no steps, so just holding onto the rails and walking should help with his rehabilitation, but Taylor refuses to move on his own at all. Even to grab a single item, he calls for either Susan or me. "Taylor, moving around a bit on your own would be good for your rehab, you know?" "Shut up. You're just a daughter-in-law. Can't you listen to your elders? I don't want to move, so don't you dare order me around." I think it's Taylor who doesn't want to move, but he just uses people like his personal servants. But Taylor is the least of my worries. I was prepared for this kind of behavior from him. The real problem turned out to be Walter. The poor man can't move. Is it really so hard for you to do this much for him? But it's for Taylor's own good. The doctor said he should do as much as he can by himself. Well, Dad doesn't seem to think so. Just do whatever you can for him, okay? He says this as if I'm just making excuses because I don't want to do it. We used to be united as husband and wife in raising our children, but Walter stopped trying to hide his attitude of dumping everything on me. Mom is here too, you know. I'm leaving Dad to you too, and when it comes to the kids, the mother is always the most important, after all. Whenever I try to discuss anything with him, he acts like it's not his job from the start. When it was just the four of us, we were busy but happy. In the midst of our hectic days, once the kids were asleep, it was finally our time as a couple. On days when Walter got home early, we would have drinks together or watch popular dramas. But ever since moving in with my in-laws, we never have time like that anymore. I wake up early in the morning to prepare breakfast. After seeing Walter and the kids off, I take care of Taylor before heading to my part-time job. Susan handles lunch, but on my way back from work, I make groceries and dinner. Then I take turns with Susan tending to Taylor. This is what's truly troublesome. First of all, Taylor constantly complains about me working. "Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure while you're out during the day? But Susan takes care of you at lunchtime and I have my job. That's why I'm telling you to quit that job. Walter spoils you, so you're getting too full of yourself." If I quit my job, would I be ordered around and worked to the bone 24/7 by Taylor? The thought makes me shudder. I absolutely don't want to quit. "I'm sorry," Susan says to me, careful not to let Taylor hear. "He was always an overbearing person, but ever since he got sick and lost his freedom of movement, he's become even more arrogant." I figured as much. He probably wants to use Susan and me as his personal servants so he can feel superior to us. He thinks he's in a position to give orders while we're meant to follow them. But it's enough that I have to put up with it. "Ashley, you should do more of what you want," Susan says, as if she's given up on everything. Of course, I have no intention of sacrificing myself for Taylor. But I want Susan to live more freely too. How can I get her to understand that? Whenever I think about it, I get so frustrated I can't stand it. As our life living with my in-laws passed the 1-year mark, the situation grew even more serious. First of all, Taylor's health took a noticeable turn for the worse. Even though he was practically bedridden, his mouth still worked just fine, and he continued to berate Susan and me. Can't you do things more efficiently? It's because you don't put your heart into it that I'm suffering. And you call yourself a daughter-in-law? Perhaps frustrated with his immobile body, Taylor constantly hurled such words at us. Susan would try to shield me from Taylor's abuse, but then he would turn physically violent. The women in this house are truly useless. After spending decades married to a woman like you, this is the state I'm in. I'm really an unlucky man. Saying this, perhaps realizing his own physical weakness, he would throw whatever he could get his hands on, like newspapers and magazines, at Susan. Of course, I talked back to Taylor many times, but each time, his abuse towards Susan would worsen, so at some point, I just started silently tending to him. I appealed to Walter about this, but since he wasn't actually the one caring for Taylor, he turned a blind eye. Don't look to me for help. I'm leaving Dad's care to you and Mom, so figure it out. That's all he would say, brushing me off. Work is really busy for me right now. I hate to do this, but until things settle down, but I'm counting on you. Once he brings up work, I can't say anything more. The truth is, the renovation costs for my in-laws' house were quite steep. Our savings have been completely drained, so I need to work hard to build them back up. He's right, so I have no choice but to give up on consulting Walter about Taylor. Things have worsened. Perhaps from watching Susan and me silently endure Taylor's treatment, Cody started to behave terribly toward us as well. Just do it now, you're so slow for a woman. I tried to rationalize that it was because he had started middle school and his environment had changed. But I couldn't convince myself that was all it was. He would hurl such harsh words at Susan, me, and even Megan. What kind of way is that to talk? Apologize. Shut up. Don't you talk back to a man, woman. Saying this, he would throw things and slam the door loudly. Cody was the spitting image of a young Taylor. Though he's my own child, gradually, my feelings of love were overtaken by disgust, and now, I rarely speak to him unless absolutely necessary. Even when I asked Walter to scold Cody for his terrible behavior, he wouldn't take it seriously. Cody's in 7th grade, right? That's just how it is at that age. It's a rebellious phase. I remember going through it too. Do you really think that after seeing his attitude? I saw it, but it wasn't a big deal. It's not like he's getting physically violent. It's true that Cody hasn't been physically violent yet. But can we really say that making a huge racket and throwing things isn't a form of violence? So you're saying we should just ignore it until he does get physically violent? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to just keep an eye on him. Walter says this as if it's not a big deal. I realize that no matter what I say to this man, it's pointless. Around the time I was living in an almost resigned state, our life changed once again. Taylor passed away. It was sudden, 2 years after we started living together. His illness had worsened, and it was the result of him having a seizure. After a hasty funeral, we returned to our normal life. Our normal life. What kind of life was that, anyway? In these 2 years, I had completely forgotten. If the life we had before moving in with my in-laws, before caring for Taylor, was normal, then the life we have now is definitely not normal. Waking up in the morning, preparing breakfast, seeing Walter and the kids off before going to my part-time job. Making groceries on the way home, preparing dinner, finishing up housework, and going to bed once night falls. If this is what you call a normal life, then we've returned to a normal life now. But my heart remains unsettled. When I look at Susan, she has the same expression. What should we do from here on? Susan asks me with a troubled look. It seems I've reached a point where I need to make a lot of decisions. Cody was still the same little Taylor as always. No, as if to make up for Taylor's absence, his words and actions grew worse by the day. Shut up! Don't boss me around! The other day, he finally shoved Megan while saying that. What have you done? Fortunately, Megan fell onto the sofa when she was pushed, so she wasn't hurt. It's her fault! Megan had the nerve to scold me. Women should just shut up and listen to what men say. All Megan did was tell Cody to throw away his own trash from the snacks he ate in the living room. Cody, why don't you try throwing away your own snack wrappers? Even little kids don't do that. When she said that, he yelled at her and shoved her. Cody is completely out of control now. How did he turn into this kind of child? I told Walter that Cody had finally laid hands on family, but the response was the same as always. He was probably just messing around. Every family has fights like that, don't they? This wasn't on that level. Cody is only going to get bigger and stronger. Please say something to him before it gets worse. Okay, I got it. I'll do it when I have time. Oh right, I'm going on a business trip starting tomorrow. Leaving those words behind, Walter left on an extended business trip the next day. As I watched his retreating figure, I quietly muttered to myself, looks like it's time to make some serious moves. As I was contemplating what to do, divorce papers arrived in the mail from Walter, who was away on his trip. A plain brown envelope. I opened it, wondering what it would be, and there it was. My hand holding the divorce papers trembled involuntarily. I bet he thinks I'm in shock. That's not it at all. Walter's attitude was so blatantly outrageous that I couldn't help but laugh, making my hand shake. In other words, now that caring for Taylor is over, I'm no longer needed. He's really easy to understand. I wonder how much more he plans to make a fool of me. I should just sign it for now. Okay. I'll submit it right away. But what about the kids? Are you really okay with this? As I was humming and filling out the divorce papers, Susan asked with a worried look. I'm fine. After all, Walter doesn't know anything. There, it's done. I'd love to go submit it right now, but that would be too hasty. I'll do what I need to do properly first, then submit it on my own timing. In any case, getting my hands on this is huge. For now, I plan to wait for him to come home and have a proper talk. That's probably for the best. It's a shame, but he made his own bed, so there's nothing to be done. Susan made a sympathetic face, but it wasn't directed at me, who had been asked for a divorce, but at her own foolish son. A few days later, Walter returned from his business trip. Oh, you signed it, didn't you? Those were his first words. Before that, there's something I want to ask. Why do you want a divorce? When I asked calmly, Walter looked a bit surprised. He probably thought I would cry and scream, or cling to him. But too bad, I won't do anything like that. I just want to hear what reason he'll give. What exactly do you dislike so much that you want a divorce? I tried rephrasing my question. In this way, it might make it easier for him to give a concrete answer. Walter is still staring at my face. He seems to be getting a bit flustered. Why do you think? He's using a cowardly tactic. It's hard for him to say it himself, so he wants me to answer and somehow seize control of the conversation. I'm asking because I don't know. Please don't answer a question with a question. The fluster on Walter's face is clearly visible. It's because you've been indifferent to me. Indifferent? When have I ever done such a thing? You decided everything about the kids on your own, never listening to my opinion at all. I'm astounded. He's the one who treated everything like someone else's problem and dumped it all on me. You seem to have completely forgotten, so I'll remind you. Whenever I tried to discuss anything with you, you're the one who wouldn't listen. Perhaps because I spoke down to him like a child, Walter seemed to get angry. Is that any way to talk to your husband? Know your place. Did he think I would cower if he raised his voice to intimidate me? He suddenly yelled at me like that. Raising your voice doesn't faze me one bit. I'm used to it thanks to Taylor and Cody, I said with a snort. Walter glared at me, his face bright red. I'll say it again, but I tried to discuss all sorts of things with you, and no matter what I said, you're the one who was indifferent. Don't lie! I never heard anything like that. Then I wonder if you'll listen to this. I took out a voice recorder, placed it in front of Walter, and flipped the switch. Out came my voice consulting Walter, and Walter's voice answering with disinterest. Why the hell have you been recording this? Because I thought you might say something like that someday, so I recorded it just in case. This is illegal wiretapping. This is exactly what I've come to hate about you. That's why I want a divorce, got it? Walter's face turned as red as a dragon's flame. He stood up and suddenly hurled the voice recorder. There goes your evidence. Walter grinned nastily with a look of triumph. I wonder if destruction of property counts as an act of violence. What did you say? It's pointless to break that. I have the data backed up. And your little outburst just now was properly recorded too. Surprised by my words, Walter glanced around the room. It really shows how little interest you had in this house. There are monitoring cameras all over the place in case Taylor tried to move around without us knowing and got into danger. Taylor would order Susan and me around to help him while he moved about wherever he pleased, destroying the voice recorder without any discussion. I'll be sure to properly document all of this. That's not fair. If you put those cameras in for Dad's sake, there's no need for them now that he's gone. That's not for you to decide. I just happened to leave them up. There was a lot of cleaning up to do, so I'm glad I put it off. Walter trembled with rage at my words. So, I wonder if you can tell me why you want a divorce. Until I know the reason, I won't agree to divorce. As I said, it's because you've neglected me as your husband. And you're okay with that being the reason? Like I said earlier, I have data on all sorts of things. You'd better think carefully before you speak. Walter swallowed his words. He had no idea how and what had been recorded. It seems he's finally realized he can't say anything careless. You'll tell me the reason, right? I won't let up on my attack. Walter's red face turns blue. Now, I wonder what reason he'll give me. It's because you've lost your appeal. Now he's saying something like that. Ever since we started living here, your domestic side has been seeping out, and I can't see you as a woman anymore. Wouldn't that be because I was caring for Taylor? That's just an excuse. If you had wanted to, you could have made an effort to stay attractive as a woman. I got fed up with your lazy attitude. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. What's so funny? Try telling that reason to anyone, nobody will understand. Saddling your wife with caring for your father, not lifting a finger with housework or childcare, indifferent even when consulted. A wife put in that position couldn't possibly have the leeway to try and stay attractive. Even Walter must understand that much. He's just squeezing it out as a last resort, and he knows it. But I do want a divorce. Walter's face brightened with glee. There are conditions, though. What? Out with it. I lay out several conditions. First, pay compensation for the divorce trial. I haven't done anything that would require paying compensation. This time, I take out a folder and thrust it in front of Walter. This is. Inside are numerous photos of Walter being intimate with a certain woman. Yes, Walter was cheating. Even before we started living with his parents. You suggested living together so you could dump caring for Taylor on me and meet up with this woman in the meantime, right? How did you? Before we started living together, I got a bit suspicious and looked into it. Walter hated his own father. So when he suddenly said he wanted to live together and have me care for him, I thought it was strange. When I investigated, this was the result that came out. The woman was Walter's subordinate. I don't know how incompetent he thinks I am, but the evidence piled up quickly. And I made sure to properly save it. I thought maybe if he saw me living together and caring for Taylor, he'd reflect and have a change of heart. So I decided to pretend I didn't see it, just once. But you didn't change. No, I should say you changed for the worse. Walter silently looks down. So I'm demanding that compensation. From you, and from that woman. This was the first condition. Shoving cohabitation and caregiving on me just so you could cheat. I think it'll be quite a hefty sum, but please accept it. Walter remains silent. As for child support, I don't need it. What, really? Yes, we'll call it even. Walter tilts his head, unable to understand my words. Let's take one child each. Cody for you, Megan for me. That's not going to work. If you don't like it, I won't divorce you. Walter fell into a grumbling silence. He probably wants to remarry his mistress as soon as he divorces me. What will you do? Walter thought for a while, but eventually said he'd accept. Maybe he's planning to send Cody to some boarding school. In any case, there are plenty of ways to get rid of him. I feel bad for Cody, but I've completely lost any affection I had for my own son. Walter's enraged face just now looked exactly like Taylor. I have no confidence I can continue living with Cody, who resembles both Taylor and Walter. You went through a rebellious phase too, didn't you? I think you'll understand Cody better. I said with a grin. We decide on a few other conditions as well. Division of assets, bearing the moving costs, consolation money for having cared for Taylor. Adding all that on top of the rest, it came to quite a sum, but fortunately Walter is currently an elite with a high salary. He readily accepted. Well then, once we notarize these conditions, I'll submit the divorce papers. Walter looked thoroughly relieved. After drawing up the notarized document and having the promised sum transferred in a lump payment, I submitted the divorce papers. With this, we're strangers. Feel free to remarry or do whatever you like. However, I will be living here until I find a new home. This was also part of the agreement. Get out as soon as possible. It's unnatural for a stranger to keep living in the same house. Walter says this with a clearly displeased look. He probably wants to call his mistress to this house as soon as possible. Come to think of it, I haven't received the compensation from your partner yet. I think I'll consider until I receive it. What? That's not what we agreed on. What agreement? Your compensation and your partner's compensation are separate matters, aren't they? The notarized document doesn't mention a single thing about the situation with his partner. I can't feel at ease until I receive that. What a greedy woman. Your partner's the greedy one, stealing someone else's husband. Walter has no rebuttal. Anyway, this is my house. Now that we're strangers, please leave as soon as you can. Walter says this with a tragic look. About that, though. I don't think this house is yours. What do you mean? Rather than Walter's bewildered face, I give Susan a light nod. This is my house. What's that supposed to mean? This house is in my name, so it's not yours. Walter looks like he can't comprehend what Susan is saying. This house originally belonged to Susan, not Taylor. So it's not yours. He doesn't seem convinced by my explanation either. Well, of course. I explained the circumstances I knew to Walter. Taylor originally married into the Carter family, and all the Carter family assets belonged to Susan. What did you say? Taylor was that kind of man, right? So having been a live-in son-in-law was too uncool for him, so it seems he absolutely didn't want you to know. Walter visibly deflated. But then, as Mom's house, I'm the heir. It'll be mine eventually, right? About that, I've actually been adopted by Susan. What the hell is that about? When Taylor got sick and the topic of living with his parents came up, Susan and I had a long, in-depth talk, just the two of us. Since we talked about it, of course Susan knows about Walter's cheating, too. I'm an only child, so to inherit the Carter family, we had Taylor marry in. That's why he put on even more airs and got so full of himself. Looking only at the current situation, it's hard to believe, but apparently Susan and Taylor had a passionate love marriage. On top of the difference in family status, with Susan being an only daughter, Taylor gave in and took the Carter name. Taylor's attitude seems to have been a show of affection towards Susan, and conversely, a way of inwardly putting himself down as a live-in son-in-law. That's probably why Susan was able to treat Taylor kindly until the very end, despite his overbearing ways. I think it's a bit of a warped relationship, but I can't help feeling a little envious of Susan for being able to maintain her love for Taylor to that extent. But my parents, your grandparents, passed away saying they absolutely wouldn't adopt him. So Taylor had no right to inherit our assets. Then why did Mom adopt Ashley? I told her about the whole situation, and on top of that, I explained that Taylor would probably be hard on her. And there was one more thing I knew. Susan said meaningfully. That's right. Even back then, we already knew you were cheating. Susan and I thoroughly discussed all sorts of things, and based on that, we decided to pretend it never happened if Walter had a change of heart, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. Ashley has really taken good care of him, and it's also an apology for Walter's treatment. I was happy she looked up to me like a real mother. Is it selfish of me to want her to stay with me forever? When Susan said that, I decided to accept the offer of adoption. So you're the one who needs to leave. You have no right to live in this house. Yes, I've decided I want to live with Ashley. I don't want to see the face of whoever you remarry. Also, my will states that all my assets go to Ashley. Mom, how could you? Walter is unable to believe Susan's words. Of course, there's a legal portion he's entitled to, but the inheritance Walter will be able to receive will be a mere pittance. That's right, get out and take Cody with you. You're abandoning Cody even though you're his mother? The notarized document says we each take one child, right? And didn't you say you understand Cody well? It's only natural for people who can understand each other to live together. Walter had nothing more he could say. A few days later, Walter and Cody left our home. I've heard where they're going, just in case. A house Walter rented. Even if Walter has custody, Cody is still my child. If anything happens, I can't claim to be completely uninvolved. I'll gladly leave this house. Living carefree as bachelors will be way better. Dad's an elite who earns a lot, unlike living in poverty with some part-time old lady. Cody doesn't know that Walter is remarrying his mistress, that he's taken on a mountain of debt from this situation, and that his infidelity was exposed at work, leading to a demotion, pay cut, and imminent transfer. Take care. Let me know if anything happens. I'm never planning to see you again. Don't come crying to Dad even if you're in trouble. Women are so stupid. I don't know what Cody will think when he learns the truth. As a mother, I do pity Cody, but with his personality so warped and trapped in misogyny, there's nothing I can do as his mother. I don't know if Walter can do anything about it as his father, but I have no choice but to leave it to him. After the divorce was finalized, I changed my job from part-time to full-time. I was originally a pharmacist. I chose that job because I wanted to do work that helps people. After giving birth, I returned to a 4-hour part-time position, but the pharmacy attached to the hospital where I work had told me I could return to my original full-time position whenever I wanted. So there's absolutely no issue in terms of income. I should be able to enroll Megan in the school she wants and support her in pursuing the path she hopes for. Walter renovated the house to make it as comfortable as possible, thinking of his own old age too. Thanks to that, we can also live comfortably. Susan is forward-looking, cherishing Taylor's portrait while trying to find her own enjoyment now. I can't fathom what was so great about that overbearing Taylor, but people's feelings are truly mysterious. Megan is also living leisurely now that Cody's verbal abuse is gone. Come to think of it, I got a call from Cody the other day. You're probably in trouble without a man around, so I guess I can come back if you want. It's probably because Walter's transfer was decided and they have to move to the countryside. It seems he's already treating Walter's new wife the same way he treated us, and their marriage is already in crisis. I've also gotten a tearful, pleading call from Walter to somehow help him. Of course, I politely declined. I appreciate the sentiment, but we're fine for now. Cody, please think about your own life. By then. With that, I hung up. It might be cold of me as a mother. But remembering Cody's face back then, hurling the same abusive words with the same look as Taylor. I can't live with him anymore. Strangely, even Susan, who could forgive what Taylor did to her, couldn't tolerate what Cody was doing. From now on, we, 3 women, are going to live each day carefree. Maybe it's a reward for those 2 years of caring for Taylor. Come to think of it, it's just a few years out of a whole lifetime. Forgetting about the storm that's passed, I'd like to spend my life like a calm, windless sea. Who are you? Let's fire you. Eloise, the president's daughter, fired me without knowing that I was responsible for 90% of the company's sales. This company is done for. I left the company and decided to join a rival company that reached out to me. When Nate, the president, found out, he turned pale. He tried to explain the situation, but it was too late. The president was furious with his daughter, and after Eloise's rash actions. I'm Marjorie, 43 years old. I'm an employee at a real estate company. I've been working hard since joining this company. Before I found this company, I had been jumping from job to job, but none of them felt quite right. I was either stuck with menial tasks because I'm a woman, or when I joined a company to escape that, I was overwhelmed with overtime and couldn't have a life of my own. But since coming to this company, I've been able to live the life I want. It's all thanks to Nate, the CEO of this company, who puts us employees first. I'm truly glad I was able to join this company. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I took the initiative to work on various projects for the company. Nate recognized my achievements and even started teaching me the role of president, saying he wants to eventually leave the company to me. I was throwing myself into this job more and more to make sure I wouldn't let it fail on my watch. However, a change came to that life. That change was brought about by Eloise, the president's daughter. Her appearance would slightly alter my life here. I met Eloise when Nate was away on a long-distance trip. I was put in charge as acting president and was determined to support the company well while Nate was gone. That morning, I arrived at the company and was about to greet everyone to let them know I had become acting president, but Eloise had already made a move one step ahead of me. While my dad is away, I've become the acting president of this company. Everyone, work hard. An email with that message was sent to everyone's computer in the company. I saw it in the vice president's office, where I usually spend my time. Shocked, wondering what was going on, Eloise barged into the room without even knocking. "Hey, who are you? Why are you squatting in the vice president's office without permission?" I was even more surprised and insisted that this was my workroom. Eloise heard that and raised her eyebrows in displeasure. "Huh? Why are you, a non-relative, the vice president? Are you just calling yourself that on your own? No way! I could never do that. Shut up. Just get out of here. While my dad's gone, I'm using this room to work." "What?" I was shocked and dumbfounded. When I asked if she had been appointed by Nate, Eloise puffed out her chest and said yes. I was even more surprised and wondered what Nate was thinking. But if Nate said so, I had no choice but to obey. With that in mind, I was about to leave the room with all my work tools when Eloise stopped me as I put my hand on the door and ordered me to go buy her a drink. "I'm busy, and starting today, you're my errand runner. Come immediately when I call for you." "But I'm busy too, you know? You're hired by my dad, right? That means you're below me. Do as I say." I was furious with Eloise's outrageous remarks, but not wanting to get involved in any more trouble, I did as she said for now and bought her a drink. Eloise smiled with satisfaction. Wondering what kind of work she was going to do, I casually glanced back as I was leaving the room and saw her starting to immerse herself in makeup and nail care without doing any work. On top of that, she even brought in fashion magazines, and the spacious desk I usually used was cluttered in an instant. Suppressing the urge to sigh, I headed to the president's office for the time being. I let the president know I wanted to use the president's office and got to work as usual. In the afternoon, I headed to the vice president's office to get some documents. I knocked several times but got no response. As I called out and opened the door, I found Eloise sprawled out asleep on the guest sofa. Surprised, I hurried over and woke her up, asking what in the world she was doing. Eloise looked at me and ordered me to go buy her lunch. "You should at least buy and bring me lunch before I have to order you to." Eloise said that, explaining that she fell asleep because she was hungry since I didn't bring her lunch even after noon had passed. I tried telling her to go buy her own lunch, but Eloise wouldn't listen. In the end, she was being so stubborn that I reluctantly went to the convenience store to get her food. When I handed it to her, Eloise yelled at me to obey her from the start without fighting back. "Why don't you listen to what I say? I'm going to be the next president, so you should be flattering me." "What? Next president? What are you talking about? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? My dad is the president of this company, right? So of course I'll be the next president." I wanted to say she was the one spouting nonsense, but I held back and explained that I couldn't come at lunch because I was dealing with a client in the morning that ran long. After that, I was immediately invited to lunch by the president of another company and went there, so I didn't have time to come here. Eloise glared at me with sharp eyes. "Wait a minute, what does that mean? You went out without telling me, and on top of that, you were treated to lunch by the president of another company? I can't believe you did that instead of me." I had been invited for a while, so it would have been rude to refuse. "Don't mess with me. Next time you do something on your own, I won't forgive you." Eloise threw a fit and began berating me, saying that even though I only gave her, the future president, convenience store food, I was living it up. "Even though you can't do your job properly, don't slack off." Eloise shouted that last bit and angrily kicked me out of the vice president's office. I was baffled by Eloise's sudden appearance and horrible attitude. She was hogging the vice president's office without doing any work. I wondered what she was thinking, and the words almost came out of my throat. But for Nate's sake, I couldn't treat her with disdain, so I had no choice but to swallow my anger. For the next few days, Eloise continued her tyrannical management of the company. She set unreasonable quotas for employees, increased unnecessary work to increase their overtime, and was just a total mess. Furthermore, she would personally go lecture employees with low sales, yelling at them as an outlet for her stress without providing any solutions for improvement. If anyone argued even a little, she threatened to fire them at any time because she was Eloise. When threatened with being fired, no one could go against her, and Eloise became even more carried away. Behind the scenes, every employee was starting to lament that they couldn't keep up with her. Still, Eloise refused to change her thinking and berated us for being incompetent employees if we couldn't keep up. I was eagerly awaiting Nate's return. Then one day, I was summoned by Eloise. Thinking I would be made to do menial tasks again, I headed to the vice president's office where Eloise was. As soon as I entered, Eloise demanded that I prostrate myself on the spot. Dumbfounded, she screamed at me to hurry up and do it. Startled by her loud voice, I immediately groveled on the spot and protested, asking what the purpose of making me do this was. Then Eloise asked me this. "I heard you're using the president's office now. What are you thinking?" "I have permission from the president. Because you're using this room." "I've been thinking for a while, but you're really shameless. Why are you acting so high and mighty?" "What?" I was shocked and looked up at Eloise with my mouth agape. Then Eloise started saying it was strange for me to use the president's office because she was going to be the next president. I explained that I had been entrusted with the role of vice president by the president and had also been appointed as the next president. I asked if Eloise would become president after that. "What are you saying? I'm going to be the president of this company. There's not a single opening for you." "But Eloise, you don't know anything about the work, right? I've also been appointed as the next president and am studying now. It's not something that can be done overnight to run the company and support it. I think it takes a reasonable amount of time to support the company and study business management." "Don't be ridiculous. I'm the president's daughter, you know? When my dad retires, that right should naturally be passed to me." "That can't be right. When Nate becomes chairman, the title of president will be passed to me, who has been appointed as his successor. Then, while I support the company, I'll teach you, the vice president, the work, and you'll become president. So from that day on, you shouldn't be able to become president unless you start your own company." I tried to explain it to Eloise as simply as possible, but she wouldn't accept it. Instead, she constructed a non-existent conspiracy theory that I was trying to take over the company and yelled at me to get out of the company right now. I said I couldn't quit the company so easily because I had a position, but Eloise's face turned red with anger and she wouldn't listen. "Have some shame for trying to take over the company. I won't let you get away with it." Spitting out those words with a malicious smile, Eloise ordered me to stand up. And as soon as I stood up, she let out a scream loud enough to be heard down the hallway. I could hear the hurried footsteps of employees nearby rushing over. As an employee opened the door, Eloise deliberately fell on her bottom and started crying. "Stop it, Marjorie. Everything is my fault, so please forgive me." "What?" "Someone kick Marjorie out of this room. She tried to hurt me because she doesn't like the way I do things." I was bewildered by the false story she made up. The few employees who had rushed over also looked at each other and for the time being told me to go outside. I pleaded that I hadn't done anything, but in a loud voice that drowned out my words, Eloise started saying that I had always been harassing her and that all her tyrannical behavior until now had been orchestrated by me. I was so scared that I had no choice but to obey, not knowing what would happen to me if I didn't. But I can't take it anymore. I'm going to sue you," Eloise declared that with tears in her eyes and glared at me resentfully. Surprised by the sudden turn of events, I couldn't argue back and could only watch the scene in a daze. Glancing around, I saw the other employees there looking at me with skeptical expressions. I pleaded that it was a misunderstanding, but everyone averted their eyes and wouldn't listen to me. The next day, I headed to the vice president's office to confront Eloise. However, she was not there. I peeked into the president's office and saw Eloise sitting in the president's chair looking at me. "What was that all about yesterday? Falsely accusing me is going too far. Thanks to that, the other employees are avoiding me now too." Then Eloise snorted, stared at me for a while, then let out an exaggerated sigh. "Who are you? Let's fire you." "What?" I let out a surprised, odd-sounding voice. Then Eloise started saying she didn't know me and asking what I was thinking, sneaking into the company when I wasn't an employee. Eloise's outrageous attitude made me feel anger bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Cut it out already. What are you trying to do? Scary. I'll have to call everyone again for help. Please listen to me seriously. Don't yell at me. I don't know you. Even if I did, you've been fired, so can you please hurry up and leave the company? Eloise laughed with a smirk, and I got angry and decided to accept her story. Either way, a company that considers someone like her as a president is not a decent company. I've been with them for a long time, but I never thought I'd end up leaving like this. And Eloise will experience firsthand what happens when I leave the company. This company is done for. With a feeling of resignation, I gathered my belongings and quickly left the company. Then I made a phone call to a certain place. A few days later, I received a call from Nate on my cell phone. By that time, I had already changed jobs, so I reluctantly answered the phone. Why did you quit the company? Nate said in a panicked tone and begged me to give him some time because he wanted to talk right away. I accepted Nate's request and told him I would wait at a designated location. Nate heard the name of the place, gasped in surprise. Then a few hours later, Nate showed up at the company I now work for, along with Eloise. It was Nate's company's rival. I had joined the rival company immediately after the incident with Eloise. Originally, they had approached me before, but I kept declining. But after being unfairly fired from the company and feeling angry, I made an appointment with this company. The president of the rival company listened to my story and accepted me right away. Furthermore, he announced that he had headhunted me and decided to give me a position as well. I was surprised that they went that far for me, but they said I was a talent they didn't want to let go, and my simple self was honestly happy and determined to do my best at this company going forward. And along with me, several employees also joined this rival company. The employees who joined with me all said they couldn't keep up if Eloise became the next president and that they would follow me. I was a bit troubled, but since the employees who gathered were all excellent talents, I told the president of the rival company that they wouldn't be a loss and decided to have them hired as well. I was impressed by the generosity of the rival company's president. When I told that story, Nate turned pale and his body trembled. However, Eloise didn't take the situation seriously and glared at me with a snobby face. We don't need traitors anymore. Dad, now that we know the situation, let's hurry up and go home. Eloise said that and gave me a cold look, but Nate, who was sitting next to her, raised his eyes and scolded Eloise. Doing whatever you want. Are you trying to ruin my company? Is there a problem? Sure, it's infuriating that the other employees are taken, but even if we're short on talent, we can just fill in the gaps with new hires, right? Don't mess around. You don't understand anything. And when did I ever say I would make you president? Huh? I'm your daughter, you know? It's only natural that I'll become president after you retire. Plus, I'll eventually inherit your estate and company, right? Eloise said that and looked at Nate with her chest puffed out. However, Nate scolded her, telling her not to say such foolish things. Even if the inheritance is passed to you, I won't give you the company. In the first place, there's no way I would consider handing over the company to someone who doesn't even know what my company does. I've already appointed Marjorie as the next president. What? But she's not a relative, right? Why would you give the company to an outsider? That's ridiculous. What are you saying? Even if they're not a relative, they have the right to become president. And it's not just simply handing over the company. I was going to take on the role of chairman and have her be the president. Hearing the president's words, Eloise was dumbfounded. Apparently, she had mistakenly believed that only relatives had the right to inherit the company. The president said in an exasperated tone that there was no way she could handle being president when she had never even worked before. So what if I don't know? I can just learn from now on, right? In the first place, the company won't go under just because this ordinary female employee is gone. To make up for her absence, we can just hire other people to fill in. You really don't know anything, do you? If you wanted to be president, I thought you would at least check the sales a little. In the first place, Marjorie is responsible for nearly 90% of the company's sales. So if she's gone, the company will quickly decline. Even if it doesn't go under, our earnings will drop significantly and our foundation will become fragile. What? This plain-looking middle-aged woman brings in that much sales. Eloise turned a surprised face towards me. She was making a face that practically demanded an explanation, so I briefly talked about my work. Then Eloise screamed that she couldn't do so many things at once, so I had to come back and teach her from square one. I sighed and told her that since I was suddenly fired, I couldn't properly hand things over, so she would struggle from now on and to do her best on her own. Don't mess with me. Quit this company right now and hurry up and come back. Once you're done teaching me everything, I won't need you anymore, so fulfill your duties until then. You're being way too irresponsible. I didn't want to quit either. But you're the one who forced me to resign, right? And then, adding insult to injury, you falsely accused me and told me to never come near the company again, right? Who's the irresponsible one? Eloise tried to argue after hearing my words, but Nate cut her off and yelled. Eloise was startled by his voice, flinched in fear, and then sulked and hung her head. Glaring sideways at Eloise, the president begged me. I'll never let this kind of mistake happen again. I won't let my daughter get involved with the company. So please, won't you come back? I'll give you the same position here that you were given there, and I'll pay you more than that company, so please reconsider. Nate bowed his head so deeply it looked like he would hit the desk. Eloise was also restrained by Nate and made to bow deeply. I told Nate with furrowed brows. I'm sorry, but I was accepted by this company and even given an important position. On top of that, they also accepted the employees who followed me. I can't repay that kindness with betrayal. So I won't go back. Hearing those words, Nate hung his head with a desperate look on his face. Eloise finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation and started crying, saying she would never do this again and asking for forgiveness for her past behavior. I clearly told her that I still wouldn't go back. In the first place, they were the ones who treated me horribly, so I told Nate to make sure Eloise took responsibility. Hearing those words, Nate forgot all reason and yelled at Eloise. Eloise turned pale at the terrifying sight and wailed like a child, apologizing. Still, Nate must have been in great shock, as he kept blaming Eloise with tears streaming down his face. How do you plan to take responsibility for doing this? Scolded by Nate, Eloise offered to work to make up for it. However, Nate wouldn't allow it. You're not my daughter anymore. I'm disowning you. I never want to see your face again. Dad, not that. I've never worked before. I can't live on my own. Eloise clung to Nate with tears in her eyes, but Nate shook off his daughter and scolded her with bloodshot eyes. No, I won't forgive you. Do you really understand the gravity of what you've done? It's not a loss that you can recover from overnight. You ruined the company I've dedicated my life to and trampled on our efforts. Running a company means supporting the livelihoods of all the employees. And in just a few days, you've ruined the lives of hundreds of employees, including me. There's something wrong with you. At Nate's words, Eloise fell to her knees, dumbfounded and frozen. Still unable to give up, Eloise turned her eyes to me, as if clinging to me. But I must have been looking at Eloise with the same cold eyes as Nate. As if to escape that gaze, Eloise quickly averted her eyes. It will cause trouble for the company if you make a scene, so please take your leave now. I told the two of them in an exasperated tone. Hearing my words, they quietly left the company. Afterwards, it seems Eloise was truly disowned. All the brand name goods and accessories she had bought with Nate's earnings were confiscated, and she was even kicked out of the house. It must be very difficult for her to live under the harsh scrutiny of society, having never worked before and never struggled with money. According to rumors I heard through the grapevine, she's apparently using a rundown apartment as a base and working day and night, juggling a supermarket and factory job. Meanwhile, Nate is doing his best to get the company back on track. He had said he planned to retire as president soon, but thanks to Eloise ruining that plan, it's been pushed back a bit. Thanks to Nate's desperate efforts, sales have dropped, but it seems the employees have been spared from being out on the streets. As for me, I've regained a peaceful life, working at my new company every day. Actually, I'm married, but my husband and I have been living separately for a long time. It's not that we were living apart because we had a bad relationship, but to respect each other's lives. But just the other day, we decided to live together. My husband brought up the idea of living together. When I asked him why, he shyly told me that his work was settling down, so he wanted to try living as a married couple with me. Of course, I agreed. We immediately moved into a house where we could live together, and on weekends we go to the movies and out to eat, living a fulfilling life. My husband, Charles, tells me he's going to marry the woman he's been seeing and asks for a divorce. Let's not waste time with property division, just leave quickly. Sharon taunts me, as if she's relishing in my misery. Donald, too, is infatuated with a woman he met at a bar. They don't want to live with me. I'll leave, just as you wish. But before that, I'll give you a piece of my mind. My name is Joy Lynn. Named with the hope of being blessed with much joy, Joy and Joy Lynn, I am a 50-year-old woman whose life hasn't been as joyful as I'd hoped. But now my days are filled with happiness, so I can look back and laugh at the past. Let me take you back to when I was 35. I was about to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary with Charles. We hadn't been blessed with children, and I found it somewhat painful to hear comments from those around us like, "Do you have any kids?" and "Children are wonderful, you know." Conversations with Charles had dwindled, partly because he had been promoted a few years earlier, became busier with work, and traveled frequently. I was working too, so we hardly saw each other. No wonder we didn't have children. Well, this too is a form of marriage, and it's easier on our minds. Having children or not, it doesn't matter. That's what I thought. One day, our family grew in a way we hadn't expected. It wasn't an angelic baby that arrived. Instead, it was a parents-in-law that seemed like a demon from hell. Apparently, right after we got married, the parents-in-law had been constantly telling Charles that they wanted to live with us. Charles weighed the hassle of living together against the hassle of continually refusing. As a result, he decided that living together would be less of a hassle. Surprisingly rational, or not. Hey, I didn't agree to live together. According to Charles, I'm hardly ever home, so it's fine. It might be fine for you. But still, as Charles said, it's fine. If the parents-in-law are good people. I had a hard time with these parents-in-law even before we started living together. They were the ones who persistently asked me, "When are you having kids?" Sharon would always say, "The more children you have, the better," every time we met. But you only gave birth to Charles, right? Living with such parents-in-law, it's a stomach-churning story. I wonder how living together will turn out. My expectations were quickly betrayed. Not in a good way. It turned out even worse than I thought. Donald solemnly declared as we started living together, "We won't give you any pension or living expenses." Then Sharon continued with a smile, "Let's go with that arrangement." Wait, what kind of arrangement is that? Charles also said something like, "We both work, so we can manage without receiving living expenses." So Charles is one of them, too. I had never been particularly dissatisfied with Charles until now. I didn't expect much from a husband even before we got married. I thought a husband who doesn't get angry easily and works hard was good enough. But now, a wave of complaints that I never had before came rushing in. Moreover, as I lived with the parents-in-law for a while, I gradually understood the real reason they wanted to live with us. Donald would often go out somewhere at night. I believed him when he said he was going out to drink with friends. But then, I found a point card from what you'd call a nightclub and a business card with Nancy written on it in the laundry. There are various types of bars, but this was clearly a service industry that directly satisfies a man's desires. I see, he likes Nancy. I can't believe he's still so energetic at his age. I thought. Of course, I meant it in a bad way. No wonder he can't give us living expenses, he's spending it on Nancy. It can't be helped. No way. On the other hand, Sharon gradually started to harass me. Moreover, she was cunning and intensified the harassment gradually, so much so that even I didn't notice at first. At first, I thought she was being kind. I could have endured it if it had just been about the way I fold laundry or season my cooking, but there were times when Sharon called me by the name of Charles's ex-girlfriend. Every time, Sharon would apologize, saying, "I remember her strongly because she was the first girlfriend Charles introduced me to. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." At first, I thought, Sharon is old, so maybe such things happen. But as it continued, I realized something was off. Speaking of which, every time I took a shower, the bathroom was always dirty. I initially thought the mess in the bathroom was from Charles and the others who had gone in before, but no one complained about the bathroom being dirty. So, without a doubt, it must have been Sharon who was in before me. There were other instances too, like when Sharon, mistakenly thinking everyone had already bathed on a snowy day, unplugged the bathtub, leaving me to shower in the freezing cold. She also once took my favorite necklace from the closet without asking and then lost it. Each time, Sharon would say, "I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't thinking. I'm sorry." While it's possible to accidentally shower or call someone by the wrong name, taking jewelry without permission is not something that can be brushed off as a mere oversight. I began to suspect that maybe this was all intentional harassment aimed at me. When I saw Sharon angrily sitting at the dining table saying, "My dinner is late because Joylyn came home late," I finally realized it was indeed harassment, albeit subtle. Come to think of it, Sharon hasn't done any housework since she came to our home. She throws her socks inside out into the laundry and tosses bottles into the trash without removing the labels, adding minor inconveniences every time. She complains if meals are late and if the sheets are messy, and sometimes she even throws things. I finally understood. Our home was indeed graced by the arrival of a baby. 2 of them, in fact, both big and delightfully stubborn. Exhausted from my job as a caregiver, all I wanted was to quickly escape this situation and go to bed, so I kept silently tolerating Sharon's behavior. I didn't have the energy to argue with anyone when I returned home. I wanted to rest as quickly as possible, even if it was just for a moment. While I was exhausted and didn't notice at first, it seemed that Sharon knew about Donald's night outings. When an actress appeared on TV, Sharon persistently asked Donald, "Donald, don't you like girls like her?" "You do, don't you?" The actress's name was Nancy. The same as the girl from the bar. Donald looked pale. After that incident, I asked Sharon once, "Are you okay with Donald going out like that?" Sharon replied, "If I get a divorce, I'll be someone who has a divorce history at this age, right? That's miserable, and it looks bad to society. Of course, I don't like it. But he's just playing with professionals at the bar, right? If he's not serious, I can accept it." She wasn't holding back from divorce because of her concern for Donald, but rather she feared becoming someone with a history of divorce. I couldn't understand it. Turning a blind eye to infidelity must be causing her significant internal stress. And Sharon's outlet for that stress was harassing me. By harassing me, not only could she vent her stress, but she could also avoid doing housework. It was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I was certain. I knew why Sharon had insisted on living with Charles. Since living with the parents-in-law, Charles increasingly made excuses not to come home, saying he had to work overtime. This house was rotten from the roots to the pillars. At this rate, even I might end up crushed under the rotten floorboards. It happened one day, about 6 months after we started living together. Charles, who rarely had the same day off, said something unexpected. "Please, let's get a divorce." It was a bolt from the blue. It turns out, Charles had been having an affair with a classmate for a long time. He even said he wanted to marry this person, and I had no clue. Apparently, they started dating just before he got promoted. I thought he was working hard for our sake, but could it have been for his classmate? Was it my fault for not paying attention to Charles's behavior, using my exhaustion as an excuse? I thought affairs only happened on TV and to people like Donald. No, maybe it's natural for Charles to cheat, given that Donald does it too. "Once this house is ready, my girlfriend and I are moving in. You can take your things and leave," Charles declared. Sharon asked, "What's going to happen to us?" "You can stay, my girlfriend doesn't mind sharing," Charles responded. "What a nice girl. Joylyn, don't let her get away with it if she asks for property division. We're going to use this house and everything in it." Donald chimed in. "Yeah, she's really a good girl. Especially if she's cuter than Joylyn." Sharon shot Donald a look as if to say, "There you go again with women." But Charles and Donald just laughed. "These people are hopeless." I replied, "All right. I'm fine with a divorce. There's a memorial ceremony in Atlanta soon, right? Can you wait until then? Planning on enjoying the feast at the memorial ceremony, are you?" How pathetic. There's no way I'm taking a woman who's divorcing me. Just leave already. Who's the pathetic one here? Who cares about the food? Despite everything, Sharon and I, the only women in the room and both cheated on, can't seem to get along. No, I was planning to move out on that day. Going back home is a bit embarrassing since I was cheated on. Finding a place and handling the paperwork takes time. I thought it would work out around then. Charles, not Sharon, replied condescendingly. "If that's the case, fine. Cheating and then acting all high and mighty. Don't underestimate me. I'll destroy everything." A week passed, and the long-awaited day of revenge finally arrived. That day, my parents-in-law and Charles left the house early in the morning to attend a memorial ceremony in Atlanta. They planned to return by evening. All right then. Let's give it a try. The garbage collection service I had hired arrived. I had them load all the furniture in the house into the truck. The sofa, the microwave, Charles' and parents-in-law's bed, and Sharon's clothes that had accumulated since moving in, Charles's favorite new vacuum cleaner, even the refrigerator and its contents. All of it gone. Ah, minimalism is wonderful. With each item thrown away, it felt like my troubles were disappearing. Next, the movers came to transport my important belongings to my new place. By evening, the house was empty. The front door made a sound. It seemed Charles and the others had returned. I decided to greet them one last time as a good wife and stood at the entrance with a smile. "What, you're still here?" Charles frowned openly. So did my parents-in-law. "Oh, that's harsh. It's the last time, so it's fine to see each other's faces before leaving, right? I wanted to see your face." "Huh? You still care about me?" Charles blushes slightly. He chuckles. "What's the big deal? Fine. Let's have a meal together one last time, shall we?" Charles, strangely in a good mood, heads towards the living room saying this, followed by Sharon, who looks exasperated, saying, "Charles is so sweet." Donald, on the other hand, turns to me with a proud look, saying, "That's my son." I'm baffled. Having a meal, huh? Would have been a nice way to part if there was anything left to eat. Huh? What? What? Ah! Understanding the meaning of my words, Charles, upon opening the living room door, lets out a silent exclamation. Sharon, annoyed, peeks into the living room after Charles and exclaims just like him. "What? Ah!" Donald does the same. Wait, Joylyn, WHY, the fridge, no, even the furniture. Appliances too. Why is there nothing anywhere? Of course, I threw them out. The house feels much bigger now, doesn't it? I thought it would be bad to leave old furniture for your new life with your girlfriend. Consider it my parting gift. Threw them out. Why? Weren't you preparing to move? I've already moved. You throw away things you don't need when you move, right? Have you forgotten? Most of the things we bought when we got married were purchased with my money. Nothing bad will happen just because I, who didn't need them, threw them away. At my words, Charles points at me, his mouth moving but no words coming out. He seems too shocked to speak. With this, I'll forego any division of property. Well, there's hardly anything to divide anyway. Sharon, furious at my smile, says, "What have you done?" I'll return that phrase to your foolish son. There are limits to indecency, like cheating while having a wife and then saying to leave because you're remarrying. Wasn't your upbringing at fault? How could you speak to me like that? You are such a terrible daughter-in-law. Do you still consider yourself my mother-in-law? To me, you're just another old lady. I speak with a malicious smile, and Sharon mutters, "So ungracious." Shaking with anger. It's a secret that seeing Sharon angry is starting to be a bit fun. Don't you remember? If I ask for a division of this house, you can't refuse, can you? Without the house, where would you two strangers live? You sold your family home, right? Yes, the PILs had sold their house when they moved in with us. We won't need it anymore, they had said. So, this house was absolutely necessary for them. They sided with their son's affair over his wife, probably thinking, as long as there's a house with a housemaid, anything goes. Hearing my words, perhaps feeling rushed, Donald intervenes. Well, let's settle this amicably, pretending to be a good person. Yes, let's do that. Let's proceed calmly, just like the old just like Donald suggests. Exactly, you know what I'm talking about, Joylyn. Of course. By the way, Donald, wasn't your cell phone broken today? Huh? Oh, yeah. I realized it after leaving the house, it wouldn't turn on. If charging doesn't work, I guess I'll have to consult the store. There's no need for that. Your cell phone is right here. Saying that, I pulled Donald's cell phone from my pocket. Huh? Two identical phones? What's going on? Donald is puzzled. I switched the phones just before you left today. The one I have is the real one, and the one you had is a used one I bought and removed the battery. So, it won't turn on. What? Since you aren't tech savvy, I thought you'd just give up easily thinking it's broken or out of battery. It seems like a huge success. Smiling, I get asked by Donald. Why would you do that? Why, you wonder? Well, I have no clue. Speaking of which, you received an email today from your beloved Nancy saying she had a good time the other day. You email each other daily, right? I'm so jealous of your close friendship. What? Donald gasps, while Sharon glares at him. So, Donald, you were out with Nancy the other day? Woohoo! More lovey-dovey than with Sharon. But you should put a lock on your phone if you're cheating. You'll get caught easily. See, stop it, Joylyn, this. But I thought cheating is wrong. Charles cheated on me, and it hurt. I know exactly how Sharon feels. So, I did something nice at the end. I texted Nancy. I'm bored. Let's break up. She was furious. I was just dealing with this old man because he conveniently gives me money. Good thing you broke up safely. Oh, by the way, this is Nancy, Sharon. Your enemy, take a good look. Saying that, I showed everyone a photo of Nancy and Donald as I returned the phone. That's when it happened. Charles showed a stern expression no one had seen before. Why? My girlfriend is. What? Everyone but Charles gasped. What's going on, Charles? What are you to Nancy? No, that's my line, Dad. Why are you taking pictures with Nancy? Because I'm her boyfriend, obviously. No, Nancy is my girlfriend. Isn't your girlfriend your classmate? We just met at a bar and started hanging out. Who would have thought that father and son were dating the same person? This development was also surprising for me. Ignoring Sharon and me, who were in shock, the men started a pointless argument about who was more suitable to be Nancy's boyfriend, which eventually escalated to a full-blown brawl, pulling each other's hair. The brawl ended when Charles pulled out a significant amount of Donald's precious, thinning hair. After a glance at the soulless face of Donald, I loudly declared, "Well, I'm off to my new place. Thank you for everything. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair next time. Bye." I had said there would be no property division, but I didn't mention compensation. Sharon realized that this was a serious affair and, swinging the bag she was holding, began furiously beating Donald in a rage. Donald stood there, head hung low, as if he had burnt out completely, unable to process everything happening all at once. Watching this living hell unfold beside me, I couldn't stop smiling as I hopped on my beloved scooter and left the scene. Although it's a far stretch, in my mind, I felt like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Oh, it's been a while since I've ridden down such a refreshing night road. This is the best. Later on, when I proposed divorce, including the alimony, Charles said, "Please wait on the divorce." It seems that Sharon is also considering divorce, and there is a possibility that everyone might lose their homes or their circumstances might change, so he wants to save as much money as possible. He said things like, "Don't you think it's pitiful for us, who once lived together, to face such a difficult situation? And we need money now, but..." I didn't care, so I proceeded with the divorce talks without discussion and took as much money as I could get from Charles and his affair partner. When claiming the alimony, I felt a bit like an outlaw, but I hadn't done anything wrong. I had just done what was natural. Well, maybe tampering with someone's phone was slightly wrong. In the end, around the same time as our divorce, it seemed that Sharon also divorced Donald. Apparently, Donald and Nancy's affair had been going on for over 5 years, and Sharon couldn't forgive that they had a relationship in private as well. I don't quite understand why bar hopping is forgivable but private relationships aren't. I thought there are various forms of marriage. Well, in the end, we're not married anymore anyway. Donald was sued for alimony by Sharon, and Charles was sued for alimony by me, so the saying blood will out held true, and the parents-in-law are now all scattered. Sharon, having been cheated on by Donald, seemed to have grown to despise men in general, including Charles, who had abandoned me in a similar manner. As a result, Charles and Sharon, after her divorce, are slowly becoming distant, though they do have minimal conversations. Donald, jobless, turned to Charles for help but was rejected, as Charles himself was barely scraping by. Charles is juggling multiple jobs, while Sharon, who had been a housewife since her early marriage, is experiencing work for the first time with a part-time job. Donald became a part-time worker living in a cheap hotel. Charles, eager to remarry Nancy, learned that she wasn't interested. Nancy saw both Charles and Donald as mere extensions of her bar work, as convenient sources of money. It turned out that Nancy had other men besides Charles in the same capacity. Charles, having been classmates with her, mistook her for being serious and believed she was his destiny. But in reality, it was a foolish and trivial story. In the end, both men were deemed unnecessary by Nancy, even as convenient sources of money, and were discarded. From my perspective, I thought, since I'm leaving, might as well destroy everything in the process. Just as I aimed. I'm very satisfied having witnessed this spectacular collapse of a family. No one in that family valued each other, only caring about themselves. So, the outcome was, in a way, inevitable. Essentially, they were a family in name only, lacking any compassion. Now, I think it was good that I got away from that household. On the other hand, while I still come home exhausted from work every day, living alone has freed up my time as I no longer need to allocate it for someone else. I have more freedom than when I was married. Back when I was married, I hardly had time to meet my college friends, but now I can travel with them on my days off and even have time for my hobbies. In college, I was part of the choir, so I decided to join a karaoke club. It seems that one can continue to improve in music, no matter the age. I consistently win at the club's competitions and even earn cash prizes. Thanks to that, my wallet is always warmly filled. Hee hee. At the facility where I work, my colleagues suggested hosting a karaoke recreation event since I'm good at it, and it was a huge hit. I received many compliments like "you're so good," and was thrilled to bring smiles to the residents through my personal hobby, something I hadn't expected. By the way, my go-to performances are Unchained Melody and My Heart Will Go On. The lyrics of older songs are just so wonderful. I don't really understand recent songs, but I guess I should study up. Though my days aren't glamorous, I'm surrounded by friendly colleagues, trustworthy friends, and kind residents who feel like family beyond work boundaries. Finally, it seems like I've become the Joylyn I was meant to be. From now on, I aim to be someone who not only receives joy, but also shares it with others. All right. Let's do our best at work today. I'll wholeheartedly celebrate the residents' birthdays. The crying kids and the wife who doesn't do housework are just in the way. Upon returning home from visiting her parents, Emery was greeted by these unbelievable harsh words from her brother-in-law, Mark. To make matters worse, Mark left Emery and her child behind at our house and went back alone. The worst. Was Mark always hiding his true nature? The action I took, shaking with anger. My name is Violet. I retired last year after working for many years. I have a daughter named Emery. When Emery was 5 years old, her father fell ill and passed away. Since then, I've raised Emery with all my love, by myself. Emery has always been a kind child. She sometimes felt lonely without her father, but grew up to be a bright and honest good child. At the age of 25, Emery married a man named Mark and became a housewife. Emery and her family live in an apartment an hour away by train from my house. One day, I received a call from Emery. "Mom, I'm pregnant." I was overjoyed to hear about Emery's pregnancy. "That's wonderful. How are you feeling? If there's anything I can do, just let me know. Congratulations," I said, offering my blessings. Imagining a bright future, I even started thinking about passing on my house to Emery and her family someday. Hoping for the health of both mother and child, I spent my days looking forward to the birth of a healthy baby boy. Emery decided to come back home for about a month with her son after giving birth, and I did everything I could to support Emery so she could rest a bit. Bathing, changing diapers, feeding milk. Taking care of a baby after so long was challenging but fulfilling, and most importantly, my grandson was so adorable that I was motivated to do anything. Emery tried to do as much as she could on her own, but I always told her not to overdo it postpartum. Thinking of Emery's health, I prepared nutritious meals. "Mom, thank you so much. This really helps," Emery would always say, expressing her gratitude. I was enjoying life with Emery and my grandson, but one thing bothered me. Emery's husband, Mark, hardly ever came to our house. I thought it was normal for a husband to come and see his wife and child. 2 weeks later, Mark finally came to our house. However, he barely exchanged a few words with Emery and didn't even bother to look at the baby sleeping in the crib on his own. Emery picked up the baby to show him, but Mark showed little interest. I suggested to Mark, "Why don't you stay over tonight?" But Mark declined, saying, "No, I'm busy with work, so I'll pass," and left soon after. I felt uneasy about Mark's indifferent behavior, showing no affection for the baby or consideration for Emery, but I continued to support Emery and take care of my grandchild with dedication. After that, Mark never showed his face again. A month flew by, and it was time for Emery and my grandson to return home. Feeling lonely again, I hoped the family of 3 would support each other. Even though Mark had a lukewarm response when he visited, living with the baby might gradually nurture his paternal instincts. Maybe he only came once because he was really busy with work. Convincing myself of this, I hoped for Emery's happiness. But a week later, when I noticed noise at the front door, I found Emery, my grandson, and Mark. Emery looked pale and worn out. Mark was saying to Emery, "The crying kid and you, not doing housework, are both in the way. Stay at your parents' house for a while." I was shocked into silence. Noticing me, Mark lazily said, Violet, please take care of the kid for a while. I'm leaving Emery here too." Violet, please take care of the kid for a while. I'm leaving Emery here too." And tried to leave. I was about to yell at Mark, but held back when I saw Emery tightly holding the baby. "Yes, that's fine." My voice was strained, but Mark, seemingly indifferent, said, "I'll come to pick them up eventually," and left without a second glance at Emery or the baby. After inviting Emery and the baby inside and asking what happened, Emery suddenly started crying. Comforting her, I was stunned by what she finally managed to say. "Mom, Mark says he's bothered by me and the baby." Upon asking for details, it turned out Mark would rage about the baby's crying and his inability to work from home. Mark's company allows him to work from home a couple of days a week. He also berated Emery, believing extreme articles online about perfect parenting and housekeeping during maternity, or unrealistic knowledge about pregnancy and childbirth. "Why is the house such a mess? There are dishes piling up. Don't use childcare as an excuse for your laziness." He criticized Emery for neglecting housework due to childcare, despite not helping at all. Finally, he left Emery and the baby at our doorstep, saying, "The crying kid and the wife who doesn't do housework are just in the way. Take care of them at your parents' house for a while," and went back alone. After hearing Emery's story, I felt a surge of anger and immediately contacted Mark's parents. When I told them about Mark's treatment of Emery, they said, "Well, but please understand Mark's feelings. It's unpleasant if a house is messy." I was speechless with astonishment. They even said, "We wish Emery would be more considerate of Mark." To which I calmly replied, It's ridiculous to put all the burden on Emery without helping with childcare or housework. I continued to lecture them. Eventually, Mark's parents seemed to understand what I was saying. When I called Mark himself and lectured him, "You're always complaining to Emery, but have you ever changed the baby's diaper or fed him milk even once? As a married couple, you need to cooperate." Mark wouldn't listen. Instead, he said, "Speaking of which, Violet, you mentioned before about giving us your house. When will that be?" Completely ignoring Emery and the baby to inquire about the house, he said in a frivolous tone, "Our current apartment is too small, so I really want to move into your larger house soon." Aghast, I replied, "I'll hand it over once you come to properly take Emery and the baby and can live together as a family," and hung up the phone. Was Mark always like this? I feel so sorry for Emery. Mark seemed like a perfect gentleman during family meetings, but I'm shocked he was hiding his true nature. Emery must have only seen the good in Mark when deciding to marry him. It's no exaggeration to say she was deceived. For now, I must protect them until Mark properly comes to pick them up. And so, our life together, with me, Emery, and my grandson, began. Emery gradually regained her spirits, and my grandson grew up healthily. 7 months later, when Mark finally came to pick them up, he was stunned to see our house. "What the? Why is everything gone?" The site was cleared. In a panic, Mark called Emery. On the phone, Mark yelled, "Hey! Why is the house gone? What happened to the promise of giving us the house? And where are you guys now?" To this, Emery calmly demanded a divorce, saying, "You finally showed up? It's too late. The child, Mom, and I have moved. Let's get a divorce." Actually, since Mark didn't come to pick them up for a long time, I sold the house and cleared the land. If he had come sooner and sincerely apologized to Emery, things might have been different, but since there was no sign of that, I decided to sell the property. By then, Emery had already resolved to divorce Mark. I hadn't expected him to come after 7 months. During this time, we managed to find a strong lawyer for the divorce and a new place to live with the money from the sale of the house, so maybe the timing was right in a way. But it was way too late. What did he think of Emery and our grandson? Mark screamed, "Divorce! Why would it come to that? I will never agree to it. Tell me where you've moved to, I'll come." But Emery responded, "I will never tell you. I'll send the divorce papers by mail, please sign them," and hung up the phone. We didn't move to a neighboring city but to a distant one, buying a spacious apartment with the money from the house sale. With a large park nearby and supermarkets and drugstores within walking distance, it's a great location for raising a child. Emery and I are completely satisfied with our new apartment, enjoying a relaxed life of parenting. Mark often called afterward, only saying, "I will never agree to a divorce." Emery reiterated her request for a divorce, saying, "If you could ignore us for 7 months, we must not be needed. Please come to terms with it and agree to the divorce." But Mark threatened, "Do you plan on taking away my parents' first grandchild?" However, Emery informed him, "Your parents have been visiting regularly, so they're well aware of the child's growth." Actually, after I lectured them over the phone, Mark's parents changed their minds, apologized to us, and even came to our doorstep to offer a deep apology for their rudeness. They repeatedly tried to persuade Mark to pick up Emery and the child, but he refused to listen. They disowned Mark, saying, "A person like that is no son of ours," and urged him to agree to the divorce quickly. Mark panicked. "Why are you suddenly saying this? Dad, Mom, that's terrible." They cut him off. "You had 7 months. We're severing ties with you as parents." Emery coldly told Mark, "Your parents have disowned you, haven't they? I also want to sever ties with you as soon as possible through divorce. Disowned by his own parents and abandoned by his wife, Mark finally conceded to the divorce. Regarding custody, although Mark said, "I want the custody," Emery countered, "I want the custody." Emery countered, "You've never even changed a diaper. What are you talking about?" Naturally, Emery was granted custody. Mark ended up paying child support in a lump sum, and the divorce was finalized. Initially, Mark wanted to pay child support in installments, but Emery insisted on a lump sum, not trusting him, so Mark reluctantly agreed. This left Mark almost broke, leading to a life of poverty after paying child support in one go. Thinking that remarrying Emery would bring back the child support, Mark began frequently demanding to remarry. "Emery, I'm really sorry. I won't blame you anymore. I can even tolerate a bit of mess and change diapers occasionally. Let's remarry," Mark said ridiculously, but Emery replied, "You still don't understand what you did wrong. I don't see any willingness to cooperate. Anyway, even if you changed now, I would never remarry you." Mark still hadn't grasped the concept of cooperating on childcare and housework as a couple, continuing to make irrelevant remarks. Emery said, "Since I've already received the child support, there's no need for us to communicate anymore. I'm blocking you. Goodbye," and blocked Mark. Both I and Mark's parents also blocked him. Emery expressed relief. "I feel so refreshed. It's a liberating feeling." Later, when Mark found it difficult to pay his apartment rent and return to his parents' home, he discovered it was for sale. Standing in front of the now empty lot, he muttered, "You've got to be kidding. Did Dad and Mom sell the house too?" Having lost his home, Mark was at a loss and reluctantly returned to his apartment, leading a lonely and impoverished life. Soon, whispers and rumors about him began to spread among the neighbors. The word was that he had driven away his wife and child with his selfish behavior, and even his own parents had disowned him. Since Emery was well liked by the neighbors, they looked down on Mark, saying, "To treat such a wonderful DIL so terribly." Even going to the convenience store near his house became a challenge for Mark, as he was conscious of people's stares, resorting to sneaking out late at night. Moreover, news of Mark's misconduct had spread at his workplace, resulting in cold treatment from everyone. Mark had a tendency to arrogantly believe everything he read online, and he wasn't very popular at work to begin with. This incident further lowered Mark's standing at work, and he was even lectured directly by a senior female colleague with experience in child rearing. As a result, Mark found no peace either at work or home, leading a life of discomfort. Stress led him to gambling, starting with a casual visit to a pachinko parlor, eventually spiraling into a life of debt. His gambling addiction led to a nocturnal lifestyle, resulting in unauthorized absences and napping during work hours, until he was finally fired. Evicted from his apartment, Mark was forced to move to a cheap, run-down property. Unable to secure stable employment, he scraped by with day labor. His gambling continued unabated, and his debt only grew larger. Despite everything, Mark never considered his own actions to blame, ranting into the night, "Why do I have to suffer like this? Damn it all!" His loud complaints resulted in complaints from neighbors and even attention from the police, showing no sign of redemption. Meanwhile, I thoroughly enjoy living with Emery and my grandson, occasionally having tea with Mark's parents, maintaining a good relationship. Mark's parents moved about 30 minutes away by car, and have completely cut ties with him, determined never to help him again, no matter what. They have no intention of telling him their new address. My grandson is soon turning 1. We plan to celebrate his first birthday grandly with Emery and Mark's parents. Though he lacks a father, Emery, I, and all of us together plan to give him all the love we can. Emery has grown stronger both as a mother and as a woman, currently in the midst of job hunting. She's more vibrant and radiant than ever. I look forward to supporting Emery and witnessing my grandson's growth. Pack my stuff too and make sure you handle it with care. Naturally, I'll be taking the biggest room, Vincent declared as the moving day to our new home approached. My husband Kendrick and I were busy with preparations for the move. It was during this time that Vincent, Kendrick's unemployed brother who lives with us, insisted we pack and transport his belongings as well. That house is perfect for someone elite like me, so I'll be coming along, he added. My name is Rachel, a 29-year-old working mother with a job in medical administration. Kendrick, also 29, is a salaried employee. Despite our busy schedules, we manage to divide household chores. I take care of meals and laundry, while Kendrick handles cleaning. We enjoy a close relationship, spending our weekends traveling and leading a fulfilling life together. One day, Kendrick received a call from his friend Tariq. I've decided to start a new company. You were interested in this industry, right? After giving it some thought, I realized I need your skills. Please, join me in this venture, Tariq passionately pitched. After some contemplation, considering Kendrick had shown interest in this field before his current job, I encouraged him to accept Tariq's offer, which he did. Tariq lives in a location far from where we currently reside, prompting us to decide on moving to work together. Tariq's father, a successful businessman, caught wind of our situation and generously offered to prepare a home for Kendrick and me. The house, with its trendy design and sophisticated interior, excited both of us. 2 months before the move, we received a call from Kendrick's mother, Cordelia, about his father, Taylor, who had been hospitalized following an accident. It seems Taylor will have lasting effects from his injuries and will need to move into a care facility, but there's no immediate availability. He can be admitted by the end of next month, so could you help support Taylor until then? Not long ago, Taylor was involved in an accident and had been living in the hospital. While his life wasn't in danger, he was left with aftereffects that made walking difficult without a cane or assistance. We were planning to hire a home health aide, but since they wouldn't be available 24/7, there was a desire to have more hands on deck. Despite hearing that living together for caregiving often leads to trouble, my relationship with my in-laws has always been very positive, without any issues. They've even given me gifts from their travels and celebrated my birthday, showing their care for me regularly. So, we happily agreed to Cordelia's request to move in and assist with Taylor's care until our move. Cordelia then whispered something difficult to say. Thank you. But, there's one thing I need you to promise. Hearing this promise left me in shock. Since moving in with the in-laws, our relationship remained as good as ever, except for one thing, Vincent, Kendrick's brother, who was always a source of concern. Vincent, 2 years Kendrick's senior, was notably gifted, easily gaining admission to a prestigious university. Afterward, he secured a position at a well-known, leading corporation, but reportedly quit soon due to an inability to mesh with the workplace culture. For a time, he seemed keen on re-employment, but lately, he dismisses job opportunities, scoffing, "An elite like me shouldn't settle for such conditions." Currently, he sporadically works part-time jobs for leisure money while residing at his parents' home. Despite efforts to encourage his departure, Vincent's imposing nature often led to confrontations. Even after changing the locks, he would ambush the in-laws, forcefully enter the house, and replicate the keys to maintain his presence without concern. Living with someone like that, I knew wouldn't be easy, and indeed it was as I feared. In Vincent's eyes, Kendrick was the failure of a brother, and I was the incompetent DIL brought by the failure. Despite prior discussions about cohabiting for Taylor's care, Vincent demanded, "Hey Rachel, I'm starving. Isn't dinner ready yet? Why am I having fish? I was in the mood for meat today, you incompetent woman. The room's getting messy, clean it up. And don't touch the stuff on the shelves, making me handle nearly all his personal needs. Of course, I ignored most of Vincent's demands, but he would still consume meals prepared for Taylor or leave his trash in front of my room as he pleased. Even reluctantly caring for Vincent elicited no thanks, only a sense of entitlement. After returning from work on weekdays, I'd start on household chores and assist with Taylor's care, making for hectic days. Moreover, Vincent treated me like a servant, repeatedly boasting about his university and corporate experiences, taking up my time. I considered leaving multiple times, but convinced myself to endure it just for the 2 months until we moved to our new home. Since our stay was temporary, we hadn't unpacked much, simplifying the moving process. Now, we just awaited the completion of our house to transfer our belongings. One day, Vincent woke up past noon as usual, looked at the leftover lunch, and sneered at the poor meal before mockingly laughing at us. "Hey, incompetent woman, make sure my stuff is moved into the biggest room. Handle it carefully, don't you dare scratch anything. When are you moving, Vincent? Let me know the address, and I'll arrange the movers for you," I replied. At that, Vincent sighed deeply, berating me for a while for being useless and stupid. Then, he started accusing Kendrick of snooping through his computer and emails. That house seems decent enough, though living there is the true test. The location and layout seem good. Plus, with a supermarket nearby, Rachel can quickly get anything I need. He noted after apparently reviewing our new home's details, asserting his move with us. Of course, an elite like me will take the largest room. He sneered, prompting me to bite back a retort, but I held back. Smiling, I simply agreed and ended the conversation with Vincent. Behind me, Vincent's delusions about the new home continued, envisioning a scenario where he, the non-contributor, was supported by Kendrick and me working tirelessly from dawn to dusk. That night, I shared Vincent's behavior with Kendrick, Cordelia, and Taylor. "Rachel, do you remember the promise?" Cordelia asked. "Yes, of course. I've told Vincent we would pack his things," I replied, nodding solemnly to Cordelia, who then sighed deeply. On moving day, thanks to thorough preparation, our transition to the new home went smoothly without any hitches. With Tarek's help, we were able to finish unpacking earlier than planned on the day of the move. The fresh scent of the new construction, combined with the sophisticated design of the exterior, entrance, and the functional storage spaces throughout the rooms, made us truly feel the start of our new life, lifting our spirits. That night, Kendrick, Tarek, and I celebrated our new home and the future of our company, opening the champagne Tarek brought, and enjoyed ourselves until late into the night. The next morning, in our new home, I received a call from Vincent. Answering the phone with my head still foggy from the alcohol, Vincent angrily demanded, "Hey, what's the meaning of this? Why are my things still here?" Kendrick quickly took the phone from me and calmly explained, "We did exactly as you asked, placing your belongings in the largest room. Isn't that what you wanted?" Indeed, we did place Vincent's belongings in the largest room, just as he had instructed us to. That room was the living room of the family home where we had all lived together. Vincent, having been lied to about the moving day, went out as usual and returned in the morning to find the house empty. He was utterly confused, unable to grasp the situation. Interrupting his tirade of insults, Kendrick firmly informed him of the future of their parents' house. "Also, Vincent, you need to leave soon. Dad sold the house during the move, so you can't live there anymore." Vincent, stunned, began loudly calling for Taylor and Cordelia. However, Taylor had already moved into a care facility, and Cordelia had started living alone in a small apartment nearby, so no one was there. "Are you kidding me? Leaving me behind and doing whatever you please? You're the one joking, Vincent." Thinking you can just show up at your brother's place and have everyone take care of you is insane. Kendrick, having lost all admiration for Vincent, who was once considered elite, ended the call with a sigh, showing his frustration. He rejected all return calls and even blocked Vincent's number, finally freeing us from his burden. A week after moving, I received a call from a friend living near our old family home and took the opportunity to inquire about Vincent's current situation. Vincent, it seems, had refused to leave the family home, believing it impossible to sell a house with someone still living in it. The real estate company, brought in by Taylor to handle the sale, found itself at a loss with Vincent and issued eviction notices from both Taylor and the company. Only after such measures did Vincent finally accept the sale was real. He attempted to cancel the sale, but since the property belonged to Taylor, Vincent's protests were in vain, leading to repeated eviction notices from the real estate company, almost reaching a legal standoff before Vincent reluctantly left the house. Vincent, relying on an address he found snooping on Kendrick's computer, attempted to come to our new home but was shocked to find himself at a police station. Kendrick had anticipated Vincent might look through his computer and deliberately placed false information where it would easily be found. By not locking the computer, to avoid Vincent possibly destroying it, Kendrick left the nearest police station's address, along with some interior photos from a remodeling company, tricking Vincent completely. Vincent then headed to the care facility where Taylor was residing, but faced with the reality that Taylor, now a resident, couldn't possibly take care of him. Vincent was declared estranged face-to-face. With no way to reach Cordelia, Vincent was left in despair and began living in a cheap apartment. Initially hanging out with friends, Vincent was forced to start working part-time jobs as he now had to pay his rent and utility bills. His educational background and corporate experience quickly landed him jobs. But his discriminatory attitude and pride in his elite status didn't change, leading to swift resignations from each new job. Eventually, interviewers turned away from Vincent due to his extensive history of short-lived jobs, seeing him as problematic. Vincent finally realized that his prized educational background and corporate experience were of no value. When we met by chance at a supermarket, Vincent appeared thin and worn, struggling even for food, his clothes tattered. Upon seeing me, Vincent desperately clung to me, and I conveyed Cordelia's directive. We were told by Cordelia not to provide any assistance to you, Vincent. You're no longer considered a son, and even if you struggle with money or need food, we were asked not to help. Hearing this, Vincent collapsed to his knees. Before cohabiting, Cordelia had warned us about Vincent's unemployed status and arrogant behavior at home. Cordelia had hoped that seeing Kendrick's positive approach to his new venture might spark some competitiveness in Vincent. Resolved to disown Vincent if this attempt failed, the in-laws were prepared to cut ties with him during this move. We had intended to support Vincent towards independence, but that resolve shattered when we were treated as failures and incompetent from day one. Realizing he was truly abandoned by his entire family, Vincent broke down, begging me for money or food. I reiterated Cordelia's words, shook Vincent off, and drove away. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Vincent remained huddled and motionless. With a sigh, I thought of it as divine retribution for neglecting the in-laws who were willing to support him, and took a slightly longer route home. As for my husband and me, with Vincent gone, we were freed from the stress of being treated like servants and have been enjoying our new life in this new land. Kendrick and Tarek's company, though initially faced challenges during setup, gradually gained trust from those around us and is doing well. Kendrick, despite being busy, is happy working in the industry he loves alongside Tarek, which makes me happy as well. As the company is on track and expecting to get busier, I've decided to work part-time there to support Kendrick's endeavor. We keep in touch with the in-laws, occasionally visiting them for meals, maintaining a good relationship. We vowed to live each day without arrogance, grateful for the support from those around us, no matter how busy or difficult our situation may be. I am grateful to Kendrick, and Kendrick is grateful to me as we happily live our daily lives. My name is Amy, and I turned 30 this year. Currently, I'm working in sales at an apparel brand, living a busy but fulfilling life. Today is our college reunion. Now that we're all around 30, everyone has taken their own path. Some are busy with work like me, others are married, and some even have kids. It's been years since we've all been able to gather like this. Amy! As I enter the venue, a friend spots me and waves, calling out. The gathering had already started, and my friends were huddled together, drinking. Hey, you must be tired, work's been busy, huh? Thanks, yeah. And wow, so many people turned up. We toast and catch up, sharing recent news and reminiscing. Long time no see, Amy. Turning around to the voice behind me, there was Estella, who used to be in the same club as me. It's been a while. She was always cute and charming, very popular, and I don't recall ever seeing her without a boyfriend. I'm engaged now. Really? Congratulations. Looking at her left ring finger, I saw a large diamond sparkling. A bit surprised by the ring, I expressed my congratulations, and she smiled. What about you? Not married yet? Not yet. I'm not in a hurry. Oh, that's so sad. I could tell the friend next to me was getting irritated by her words, but I subtly kept my emotions in check. It didn't bother me, and I didn't want to spoil the reunion with negativity. I'm enjoying my work for now. But you're already 30, right? The other side, knowing what was coming. She had always been like this since college. Always wanting to feel superior to others, looking down on them. My husband is super elite, you know. Look, he wanted me to have this ring. That's great for you. You were so pretty and popular in college. Maybe it's true what they say about beautiful women being too picky and missing out on marriage. I never intended that. The ultimate happiness for a woman is to marry a wonderful husband, but maybe you'll never have that chance, lol. She laughed mockingly, looking at me. Should I introduce you to a man? You must be lonely. I'm fine. I'm just too busy with work to think about marriage. Are you just pretending? You probably need someone else to make it happen for you. She left the place triumphantly, saying she would contact me again. I felt a wave of exhaustion, and my friends around me expressed their concern. She hasn't changed at all. Always wanting to be better than others, never listening. Yeah. What will you do if she contacts you about introducing a man? It's a joke, right? She's too busy for that. Even if she does, I'll decline. At that moment, I was optimistically thinking. That being engaged, she must be busy herself. But the very next day, she started sending me messages to introduce men. Of course, I refused every time. Dealing with that was a hassle in itself. One day, after finishing work and stepping outside the office. Amy. What? Waiting in front of the office was her. Seriously. You only ever send refusals, so I waited here. You haven't even been replying lately. What kind of men I prefer, what's wrong with the guys she's been trying to set me up with? These questions had become increasingly persistent recently. If I showed any preferences, I'd probably be accused of being too picky at 30, so responding had become a burden. I get it now. What do you get? That you haven't realized the joys of marriage and can't be proactive about it. So, I'm going to explain all the great things about marriage to you. With a face that showed no ill intent, she smiled. Being in front of the office, I couldn't just dismiss her coldly or ignore her. I had no choice but to lead her away, so I invited her to a restaurant. We entered the restaurant, but instead of focusing on the meal, she went on and on. About the wonders of marriage. How much she's loved. How rich her fiancé is, and even though they're only engaged, she has lots of money to spend freely. How she's a winner and I, unmarried, am a loser. How pitiful I am. And how she's doing all this for me. She sighed as she said this. See, if you stay the way you are now, you'll never find someone. That's why I'm helping you. No. I don't need it. I want you to be happy too, like me. Her smiling face seemed a bit scary. Despite her continued insistence on the joys of marriage, I firmly declined being set up with men. She seemed unsatisfied, but eventually, she seemed to give up on that. Still, she insisted on talking in person. Better than being ambushed in front of the office again, I thought, so I agreed. Amy. Sorry to keep you waiting. Then let's go. She pulled my arm and we started walking. I thought we were heading to a restaurant, but no. Where is this? I took care of the arrangements, let's go. She forcefully led me to a venue for a mixer, a place for men and women to meet. She confidently tried to check us in, so I quickly pulled her arm and stopped her, somehow convincing her to step away from the venue for a moment. I grabbed her shoulder. Hey! This is troubling. I can't do this. She, being engaged, shouldn't be at such a place either. When I stopped her, she frowned. I came reluctantly, just for your sake. I'm only accompanying, so it's fine. Wait. I have a boyfriend. I'm just waiting for my work to settle down before getting married. So you don't need to worry about me. Maybe it was wrong of me to stay silent until now. I never intended to publicize that I had a boyfriend, but because of that, we ended up here. Sorry. Oh, you don't need to pretend so much. Excuse me. If you hate parties that much, let's go home today. That's why you're still single. She laughed and left. I just didn't know what to do anymore. Good work today. It's late again. Looking at my watch, it's already past 11 p.m. Getting off at the nearest station, I hurried home, but heard footsteps behind me. When I slowed down, the footsteps also slowed. When I sped up, they sped up too. Was I being followed? The thought sent chills down my spine, and I broke out in a cold sweat. In a panic, I took out my mobile phone and made a call. As the ringing continued, I prayed for a quick answer, but then someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Amy, right? I turned around in fear, to see a smiling man. A stranger I didn't recognize. How did he know my name? You must be mistaken. What's wrong? We've been messaging each other every day, haven't we? I've been waiting for you at the nearest station. The man said, smiling. I was too confused and scared to even speak, having no idea what he was talking about. Then, Amy. I heard a hurried voice calling my name. Turning around, there was my boyfriend Dennis, running towards me with his mobile phone to his ear. In surprise, I looked at my phone and saw it was still on a call. I must have left it on after dialing. Dennis. Sorry I'm late. He had been waiting for me at home, but when he got my call and sensed something was wrong, he rushed out to find me. I faced the bewildered stranger with Dennis. Excuse me, this is my girlfriend. But how do you know her? As I stood there scared and Dennis guarded, the man seemed confused. He claimed to have met me on a dating app. I don't use those. I firmly denied it. Could you show us the messages, if you have any? The man showed his phone, and sure enough, there were messages under my name. But they weren't from me. Even Dennis, looking over my shoulder, could tell. However, the photo registered on the app was indeed mine. A deep sense of fear overcame me. Who would impersonate me and why? Then it hit me, there was one person I could think of. I explained to the man that the messages were not from me. Realizing our obvious distress and wariness, he seemed to understand and left. He hadn't intended to act like a stalker. I was too busy to meet easily. I often returned home late. And that if he waited at my nearest station, he might get to meet me. He was led to believe these messages by the impersonator. I called the person who came to mind, and she answered immediately. Estella? Hi, Amy, what's up? I need to confirm something. Yes? You haven't been impersonating me and messaging men on a dating app, have you? I hoped I was wrong, but she just laughed off my question. Why, how did you know? I was planning a surprise for you once I found the right person. Surprise. She said she was messaging on the dating app on my behalf, as I'm too reserved and lazy to do it myself. Her complete lack of malice in doing so was what made it even more terrifying. Please, just stop. It's none of your business. But you must be feeling so pitiful, surely you want to be like me? She seemed genuinely convinced of this. She's really crazy. My boyfriend, who had been listening to the call, muttered in disbelief. Sorry for dragging you into this. No, it's fine. He was relieved that I wasn't alone when this happened. But what should I do? I never expected someone to be this unreasonable. The fact that she seemed so innocuous made it even more problematic. Why is she so obsessed with you? I think it's because she liked a guy I dated back in college. I heard about it long after we broke up. But why would she do this now? If she resented me, wouldn't she want me to stay single forever? She's engaged and supposedly happy, about to marry a wealthy guy. Then, maybe you should start investigating these things. My boyfriend suggested. What? Look. He showed me the screen. It was the homepage of the dating app we had seen earlier. Click here for profiles earning over $100,000, screening required. It led to another app. And what was the name of that party? He asked. Searching the name on my phone. I knew it. It was also for people earning over $100,000. Meaning she was trying to set me up with men earning less than her. Such a devious tactic. I blurted out. Then, I know this might not be the right time to say this. Yeah. As I was stressing out, he turned to face me, looking serious. And a bit nervous, making me nervous too. How about we get married? His unexpected proposal took me by surprise. Married? I've been thinking about it for a while. But you were busy with work. Now might be the right time. Getting married might stop her obsession. At least, it would put an end to her unwarranted meddling and setting up random meetups. But using you like that. And getting married for such a reason. I want to be used by you. I'm also seizing this opportunity. Maybe this timing will get you to marry me, he said with a shy smile. A month later, I called her. Amy, what's up today? I wanted to talk and thank you. Walking together, she tilted her head in confusion. Eh? For what? Here. Everyone's already gathered. Everyone? Leaving the bewildered Estella behind, I entered the restaurant. Everyone had already gathered. Sorry for making you wait, you could have started without me. We couldn't start without the guest of honor. I thanked my friends and took a glass from them, handing one to Estella too. Guest of honor. Congratulations on your marriage. Congrats. Everyone raised their glasses and started to drink. Only Estella was confused about what was happening. Maybe I had been a bit cruel. I've decided to get married. What? How? She was shocked. That time you registered me on that app without my permission. That dangerous mistake. My boyfriend said he couldn't leave me alone after that. It was also the right time as my work was settling down. I showed her the engagement ring we had picked out together. I'm sorry I didn't explain properly earlier. But I didn't think you'd believe me if I just told you. That's why I decided to invite her here. She trembled, falling silent. Amy, well done. Dennis. Then, my boyfriend arrived. He had been invited as it was a celebration of our engagement. Nice to meet you, I'm Amy's fiancé. We've been living together for a while. Thanks for giving us the push towards marriage. He smiled. Perhaps a bit too pointedly. I nudged him with my elbow to calm him down. You've been living together? Yes, he's been supporting me since I was studying for the bar exam. I want to repay his kindness, but he's too busy with his work. I'm already getting plenty of support from you. Bar exam? Yes, I'm a lawyer. He smiled. And your salary is? Well, it's decent. He was confident. But. Estella showed us her engagement ring. It's a coincidence, I'm marrying a lawyer too. She seemed upset that I was happy, but didn't want to admit defeat. I didn't like her sudden marriage announcement. I could sense her feelings. Oh, a fellow lawyer? Which firm? He asked. It's on the business card. She fumbled for her card, flustered. He checked it and frowned. Never heard of this firm. Just like he did with the app and party incident, he quickly searched on his phone. Oh? It's not here. The search only brought up similar but different names. And also, he continued, lawyers get a registration number when they become one, and in this state, it's usually 7 digits. This card has 10 digits. So, this number doesn't exist. Estella's face went pale. You must be kidding me. No, I'm clearly not. He replied calmly. No, that can't be true. I've always been on dates at the top floor restaurant of a hotel, enjoying full-course meals, and I even received 100 roses on my birthday. This ring is a 2-carat diamond, after all. She frantically called her supposed fiancé. Hey, I'm at a friend's engagement party, and they're saying there's no record of your lawyer number or your law firm. From her mobile phone, a loud angry voice shouted, Shut up, woman! Followed by the sound of the call being disconnected. That can't be! She collapsed onto the floor, sitting down without regard for her surroundings. My boyfriend then added his piece. I have something to tell you, right here, right now. I love Amy. Her strengths and her weaknesses. I respect her dedication to the things she loves. Although she doesn't want to make a big deal out of this, impersonating someone and using their photos on an app is a criminal act. If it happens again, we'll take legal action. Just so you know. No! Urged by my boyfriend, I turned my back on her. As I walked away, receiving congratulatory words from friends, I glanced back. She remained crumbled on the spot, biting her lips. She left soon after and didn't show up at the gathering again. Later, I heard through the grapevine that when she returned home, she found nothing there. The supposed lawyer had blocked her calls and went silent. Recently passed the bar exam and have no money for my parents' hospital bills. I want to open my own office near our new home. I need funding for that. Believing these words, she had quickly given him money. Not having enough in savings, she even borrowed from consumer finance companies. As for the large diamond ring she boasted about, it turned out to be a fake when appraised, something sold in a novelty store for $7. Later, Dennis and I got married. Our life didn't change much since we were already living together, but seeing my wedding ring during work always brings a smile to my face. The realization that I'm married to him fills me with joy. He respects my dedication to my work, and we support each other. What is happiness? For me, it's being married to someone who treasures me. The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave. I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But, in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle, my cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear. Is it hard to be against aging? However, reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day. Suddenly, she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, what are we going to do now? Alexander quickly said. I thought, we'll support her together. But, Alexander said, I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all. And he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid, spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet, Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years dedicated to household chores and caring for her, I was thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill. Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school, Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed study harder. I needed help, but what he said next was unbelievable. Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here. What? Turns out, he had impregnated a classmate. Dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother, how could he care for a baby? A child making a child, that's what it seemed like. I protested loudly. I don't want to live with you. But, don't worry, I won't bother you. He just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend, Stella, moved in. At first, I know it's tough at home. I'll help. She was saying nice things to me, but as expected, within 3 days, I can't strain myself because of the baby. She had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropouts stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother. When I rushed home to care for her, "What's for dinner?" That's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night, they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances, but then Stella's baby was born. Now, it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child, with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school, one day, "Hey, Riley, how about this place?" "Huh?" Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living. This one's close to a grocery store, good for a girl like you, near a busy street, safer. Stella, I don't plan on moving. Huh? She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured, as if I had no choice. But, okay, I understand. I couldn't just say, we should consider my mother. Just take her with you. That's impossible. I have nowhere to go. I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something. That's terrible. Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself, pampering. You're in high school, time to move out. Why do I have to listen to you? I argued back, tears in my eyes. I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with harsh situation? Get out quickly. Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out. Here. Handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents. Stella then kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me. See ya. And closed the door. Wait! Please wait! I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized. What's the matter, young lady? The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street. Mr. Harris! He asked what happened. I've been thrown out with my disabled mother. But I couldn't said. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful. Come on in for some coffee. He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted. Harris gave us towels and warm coffee. Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things, to help me relax. Eventually, I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife. I opened up. What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go? I don't know. How about I offer you a place to live? No, we can't. We don't have the money. Oh my. I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free. That can't be right. It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother. Why would you do for us? Don't you remember? Remember what? I used to be the janitor at your elementary school. I'm sorry, I don't remember. No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help. Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered. After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor. But, just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much. No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful. I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us. You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter? She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help. That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly, I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible. His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, I was planning to live alone for college but thought it might be lonely. She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores. I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible. Scarlett was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I hardly could have attended the high school class. Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day, how can I repay you? I asked him. Then, why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies? He suggested. It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said, seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me. So, I accepted the job at his company. Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house. Furthermore, Harris said, I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas. He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married. Harris confessed, I had planned for you two to get together from the start. He said that. When we announced our marriage, now we're truly family. He said with a twinkle in his eye, though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life until one day. Riley, isn't this your brother? What? Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander. It is Alexander. He's applied for a caregiving position at one of our homes. He's got an interview next week, among other candidates. Caregiving. He would never do that. I wonder how he ended up applying here. I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview? He grinned at my suggestion. That's a great idea. He said that. On the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work. Please, take a seat. He complied, and our eyes met for a moment. Riley! Long time no see. I smiled, speaking to my startled brother. Why are you here? I'm the interviewer. Why are you here? I thought you despised caregiving. I love caring for the elderly, you know. Lies. After what you did to my mother and me. I was young. Please, Riley! He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg. What's all about? I've got no other choice. Please hire me. What do you mean? He exploded with emotion. I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else. But she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good. Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity. I won't let him forget what he did to us. That's all? Surprised by my response, he said, How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune? I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all. That's different. Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job. Silenced by my words, he just trembled. Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around? He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head. No wonder you're not treated like a human. You're like a walrus, just eating and lying around. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation. He had nothing to say, just shaking. Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate. What? You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural. His resume showed short stints at each job, likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, Even during this interview, his selfishness was evident. I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left. Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you. With a smile, I said, please, do not such a thing. And Alexander apologized again. That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And, actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone. You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that. I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me. Goodbye. And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened, if you make any more noise, I'll call the police. And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness. I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip. Next year, and the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I am happy now.